Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, some breaking news today in the National Football League. Do not adjust your eyes. This is something that has been going on since late yesterday when Philip Rivers made the trip to Indy for a workout. Well, today he is officially signed to the Colts practice squad. Riley Leonard, the great player out of Notre Dame and out of Fairhope, Alabama. He's questionable for Sunday. Of course, he came in when Daniel Jones suffered his Achilles injury. And now Philip Rivers, the 44-year-old grandpa, actual grandpa, not making a pejorative here, he will actually go into the league this week as a player for the Indianapolis Colts. Gerhard Mathangani, Patrick Walsh with you here on Southeast Sports Plus. We are tied to this story in a really unique way that has a lot of different tentacles. We will start with the short term, then go to the long term. Riley Leonard played his football, high school football down here at Fairhope. Then, of course, he ended up going to Duke, and then obviously went to Notre Dame, went to the national championship, came back and played in the Senior Bowl. Well, where he went to school, there is a private school right down the road called St. Michael High School, and that is where Philip Rivers is the coach. And for those of you who have not been keeping up with 4A football in Alabama, this is a program on the absolute rise. Earlier this year, they were the #1 team in the state after knocking off Jackson, who ended up winning the state championship. And now Philip Rivers, now that the season is over, is headed back to the NFL. Your thoughts?
You know, I tweeted out earlier, he's just less than 2 weeks removed from coaching St. Michael in the state semifinal, which you could make, if you follow Alabama high school football, you could basically make the argument that the state semifinal was the state championship between St. Michael and Jackson. And I was like, man, is this real? and I love Ian Rappaport's tweet last night, and he goes, yes, this is real. This is actually a thing.
He had to clarify.
Because, nowadays there are so many of those like fake, like parody accounts 100%. That just like spewing nonsense.
Right.
And this is probably something that
people would think.
But no, this is real. Philip Rivers is signed to the Colts practice squad. Now we have to put an emphasis on there's no guarantee that he's actually going to play.
Right.
He's just on the practice squad. But one of the interesting things that you and I have been keeping up with is if he is activated to the active roster, that's when the Hall of Fame clock resets, and he's a semifinalist for the 2026 class.
Right, one of 3 quarterbacks. It is Drew Brees, it is Eli Manning, and Philip Rivers, 3 dynastic quarterbacks of their dynasty. Of course, they played in the same era with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, so you would figure even if they do all get in, they might not get into the same class, but either way, it looks like Sunday could possibly reset his clock, and he'll have to wait another 5 years to be able to get in. From a Colts perspective, this is a team that at the beginning of the season, they looked prime and ready to be a true contender for the Super Bowl. Then they, of course, signed the Sauce Gardner out of the New York Jets, and it made it seem like this is a team looking for a push to the actual playoffs. And now it seems like, hey, they're continuing that stretch of we think that we can still have a shot, and we think that this guy can help us get there.
There's a few things that go with it. Obviously, the big trade for Sauce Gardner at the trade deadline, sending 2 first-round picks over to the Jets, which if you want my opinion, I feel like that was an overpay from the beginning. I feel like a few of the trades that we saw in the NFL this year were huge
stretches,
overpays. I mean, just unreal. Even the Micah Parsons trade before the season, I still think was a little bit of an overpay. But this is a Colts team that I believe is 1-4 in their last 5 games. No, they started 8-2. No 8-2 team, or no team has started 8-2 and missed the playoffs. If you look at the remaining schedule for the Colts, it's brutal.
It is,
and they slowly feel like the division is slipping away after. They had a chance to really ice it, in my opinion, if they could have beaten the Chiefs a few weeks ago. And they let Kansas City and Mahomes get a little bit of life and then came back in that game. And if they do miss the playoffs, that's probably going to be the game. Because you can't put this on injuries because you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
And at the same time, I don't think they realized what they were getting out of Daniel Jones when they signed him earlier in the year.
Yeah, I don't think that anybody did, and he was off to just a unbelievable start.
Unbelievable.
To start the season, and of course, they also had the best running back in football at the time in Taylor.
And Jonathan,
And Jonathan Taylor. And I think that when you take a look, at what the Colts were building because they were good on defense. They could run the ball, and of course Daniel Jones was having the time of his life as far as throwing the football, something that we saw only early in his time with the New York Giants. Now, you fast forward a few weeks, and as you mentioned that Colts game. I think that was kind of the linchpin moment for this team. They were up 20-9 into that game. The Chiefs ended up coming back and showing that championship medal. They won that game in overtime, 23-20. And since then, they've lost 2 more. They lost to Houston, and of course, last week they lost to Jacksonville. You mentioned their upcoming schedule. You mentioned how brutal it is. Seattle right now in the playoffs. San Fran challenging for a playoff spot. Then Jacksonville again at home, and then going on the road to Houston, a team that has sort of found their footing over the last few weeks as well. So a couple really tough division games, and 2 teams that are viable playoff teams.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the roster right now. Riley Leonard, as you mentioned, he got a little bit of action against Jacksonville, and you know the numbers that you're going to get from Phillip Rivers when he was still playing. I mean, 63,000 passing yards, pretty good TD to interception ratio, and he's north of 60% for completion percentage in his career. But you just have to wonder how long this layoff has been since the last game. I mean, if you take a look at some of the longest stretches between NFL games, he would be third. Sunday would mark 1,800 days.
Wow.
Since he last played a game.
Yeah, and obviously he will be the highest profile name on there.
Hold up. I'm looking at this graphic. 2,800 days. How many?
1,000 more days.
How many years is that? I got to do the math here real quick. So we got 28/27 divided by 365. That's 7 years. That's 7 3/4 years.
Wow.
So what was 7 years? 2018. Early, like basically the playoffs of 2017.
Right.
That's like was 2017 the year where the Saints no-call PI?
I believe it was in that neighborhood. I think
it was because the 2017 February was when the Patriots won the Super Bowl, I believe.
Right. Yes.
So that basically that's like that moment, and I know Saints fans will always remember that moment because I think, in my opinion, the referees kind of missed out on one there, and Drew Brees would have probably had his second ring.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like going from that game to now.
Right. And not playing at all since then.
That's shocking.
I had to go look up our boy Frank our boy Frank's stats over here. Frank Tripucka back in the day. So was
it 1960, right?
1952.
Oh,
he was 25 years old. Came back in 1960 at the ripe age of 33. So even then, he was still, when he came back, he was still 11 years younger than Phillip Rivers is going into this one.
And I mean, there's just so many nuggets to chew on here. Obviously, Phillip Rivers, his oldest kid, is the same age as Riley Leonard.
Same age as Riley Leonard, the guy who he's replacing.
But here's what I want to talk about next. It's, obviously we've had the opportunity to cover him because he's led the team in our area in St. Michael. But they've been running this Colts offense all year.
This is a really interesting point, and you're the one who brought this up, that of course Shane Steichen and Phillip Rivers, they go way back. They go back to their days as a Chargers kind of the offensive brain trust for that team. But you said it, and if you watch on YouTube, there was a cool interaction between the long-time former coach and John Gruden and Phillip Rivers about some of the small details about some of the things that he's doing with the St. Michael program and how he's transitioning that with his son Gunnar Rivers. And Gunnar Rivers, an unbelievable year this past year, one of the best statistical seasons in the state of Alabama, regardless of classification, and led his team, as you said, to the semifinals. So this is a guy. It's not like a lot of situations where you're pulling a guy off the couch. Yeah, you're pulling him away from football, but you have to imagine he's throwing a football every day at practice. He's still calling the same plays, and to be honest with you, I just see a nice through line here that doesn't exist with a lot of players. So while the football world is scratching their heads, to me, I'm like, some of this makes a lot of sense from the outside looking in.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when you look at it from the perspective of, yes, him and Shane Steichen have been talking for what seems like the whole year. Yes, St. Michael ran basically the Colts offense this season and led them to the state semifinal.
Right.
Now, the thing that I get tripped up on, me personally, if this were like baseball, I could see this being no problem
Right.
because, I mean, it's just, no offense to baseball, it's not as physically demanding.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I'm just worried about is that he's 44 years old.
Right.
Hasn't taken a hit from an NFL linebacker since 2020, since the Bills Colts AFC wildcard
playoff game. Yeah.
And it's just like, if he takes one hit, it's just going to be scary.
Yeah, and I think that the physicality part is that, and also, I mean, we've watched the NFL for a long time. These rules have protected quarterbacks for a while, so we're getting a little bit more of that, where they're not touched as much, but. If he hangs on to the football for once too long, he will have one of those hits that he hasn't taken, like you said, in a really long time. He might have taken a hit from a 17-year-old in practice, but nothing quite like what he will see there with the Colts.
And here's the thing: it's not like they're going up against like the Raiders or the Browns.
Yes,
they're going up against the Seahawks. And this is probably the best Seahawks defense since the Richard Sherman days. And they're, oh my goodness, I'd be scared. I'd honestly, I don't know. I mean, there's always a mental barrier that you have to get over in sports.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's injury, long layoff. And it's just, I wonder, yes, he's been staying in the sport, obviously. And I'm not trying to bash the guy by any means.
Sure.
Like, I want him to do well. It's just, is the clock still there mentally where it's like, okay, I got to get the football out by this time.
Right.
Because it's the NFL. It's not like backyard pickup where you can just hold on to it and you got to wait 5 seconds before you can blitz and then get the quarterback. No, I mean, it'll be interesting, but there would be nothing that I'd love more than to see Phillip Rivers sling it 50 times against the Seahawks for 400 yards, out-duel Sam Darnold and get the win.
It seems like to me we're living in an age where these kind of stories can happen. I mean, it's recent history. We saw Joe Flacco come out and lead the Browns. Got a nice win there. We've seen this before. Remember, Vinny Testaverde came back after a long layoff, or after a time of a long layoff. And then you just think about the quarterbacks in Phillip Rivers in his generation. Do you think right now Tom Brady can go from the booth and go suit it up for 4 games? I absolutely do.
Yeah.
Do you think Drew Brees can go out there and suit it up for a few games? I absolutely do. Eli Manning, for sure. Peyton Manning might be a bit of a stretch.
I think that's where you draw the line.
Yeah. But all the guys that are in his immediate realm, so to speak, we're living in this time where I just think that these careers can go a hair longer than normal. But you mentioned it, the hits, the physicality of the game will be the best.
I can't wait until next week's Monday night game because I want to see what Peyton has to say on the Manning cast.
Oh yeah,
because he's gonna get there and be like, Blue 42, Omaha, say hut. And then he's going to be like, all right, I'm signed.
And how many guys and how many players, old school players will, the thought bubble will jump in their head.
Swagoo just asked Troy Aikman last night, hey, you going to play? And Troy's like, no. That would probably be like 10,000 days. That would easily set the record.
Right. And this could all just be a placeholder for Riley Leonard as well. Riley Leonard, of course, the rookie out of Notre Dame, led his team to a national championship last year. He had a decent game, pretty solid game against Jacksonville. Threw for 145 yards. There you see him with Trevor Lawrence. Ran for a touchdown, his first touchdown of his NFL career. And because of their proximity to Fairhope, Alabama, they actually know each other, Phillip Rivers and Riley Leonard, really well. So he's getting at least good advice on how to handle his body, how to handle his time during this. And I think a lot of Colts fans are just hoping that he'll be okay enough to be able to play, possibly. I just find this dynamic really interesting, though.
Yeah, and I think if at the very least Phillip Rivers doesn't play, this just adds another set of eyes on the field and another voice in the ear of Riley Leonard when he has to inevitably go up against the Seattle Seahawks, who are chasing down the NFC West. But I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Leonard came back. I know he's dealing with the knee injury that he suffered against Jacksonville. He's questionable, and that's why we're even having this conversation to begin with Phillip Rivers. But it wouldn't shock me if Riley Leonard started. It also really wouldn't shock me if Phillip Rivers got the nod.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think if you're the Colts, and I know Brett Rypien is the other quarterback on your depth chart, if it came down to if Riley Leonard's unable to go this weekend, but I believe in my heart that Riley Leonard's going to do absolutely
everything
he can
for sure.
But if he's unable to go, I think if you're the Colts, you have to go to Phillip Rivers.
You have to.
Before you go to Brett Rypien, because, I mean, Phillip Rivers, you just got to wonder, maybe there's something left in the tank here. And all you got to do is hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor 40 times. He's so good.
Yes.
As is.
Texting back and forth with friends, and that's what they were saying. They're not asking him to be a savior.
No.
He doesn't have to throw the ball 50 times, even though that's what I would want. But in a 60-play, 70-play game, can he hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor or their fantastic running backs, or really short passes there as well? That will be the really interesting thing for me to see there in that matchup. And we'll have a lot more on this as the week develops and we get more answers coming out of Indianapolis.